this, assuming you introduced me. My name is Mohamed Kimbugwe. I work with the Digital Transformation Center of GIZ Kenya as Digital Government Advisor. Prior to that, I worked in Uganda still with GIZ and the Nexus of Digitalization and Human Rights. Prior to that, I was a Disability Inclusion Advisor with Light for the World, Netherlands. I interest myself in people causing no harm and including everyone. So where we have reached, it is a human obligation. I'm entitled to meaningful participation because disability is simply the presence of barriers. In the absence of barrier, you don't have disability. If this thing works fine and I'm partaking in this meeting, such a thing as disability doesn't exist for me. You get what I mean? So disability is when impairment encounters a barrier. And this has gone on for ages in the built environment. So the assumption was, with the digital innovations, we had got a silver bullet. The assumption was, I don't have to worry whether my banking hall has a ramp. I don't have to worry whether the teller at my bank knows sign language or not. All I need is my phone and my bank's mobile application. So from the comfort of my home, I wouldn't have to worry about inaccessible transportation. If I live with a physical disability, I wouldn't have to worry where my wheelchair is going to pass, how it will get onto the bus, how I'll get to the bank when I have a phone on me. So the assumption was digitalization gives us the beauty of surpassing traditional barriers, the beauty of surpassing barriers in the built environment. But the question is, how true is this? How true is this? You can look at all your websites. She was talking about accessibility audits. Think about all the digital innovations you've worked on, embarked on, and tell me with confidence that a person living with a visual impairment would run into your space and their screen reader would make sense out of it. Let's start with the basic things. When did you last send out an email?
This morning.
Open it. That's the basic things. An email, a Word document. So before we go into the complicated stuff, let's start from the basic ones. Anyone who sent out an email recently, please open it.
What about who has received?
So you can start by looking at the size of your letters. You're even struggling to read them and doing like this. Yet, whatever it is that you're using, whether it is Outlook or Gmail, gives you simple options for making sure that your email is accessible. Things like contrast will have to be decorative. You write an email in purple, magenta, orange, but you always ask yourself who's going to read this if they live with a visual impairment. So look at the email you sent out to and ask yourself if someone bumped into it and they live with a disability, would they make sense out of it? Look at the most recent Word document you worked on. How accessible is it? Do you have alternative text for your photos, for your other objects in your document? But Word has a simple accessibility checker. You just have to turn it on and it will point you to all those inaccessible things, and it will even give you options for how to correct them, same as PowerPoint. So I'm just giving you a basic example that it all begins with an attitude. We all must believe that everyone is entitled to this. So that attitude is seen from the smallest of things, from the font types and font sizes you choose for your email, from how you choose to make your documents accessible, before we even look at the complicated stuff like accessible web content. If you know a friend who uses a screen reader, they'll tell you their screen reader has a problem. And I always tell them, no, your screen reader is fine. The content is messed up. So your screen reader just can't figure it out. If I'm speaking Chinese and your screen reader is in English, then you can't figure Chinese out, right? So if content is not accessible, it doesn't matter how your screen reading software is, content is simply inaccessible. How much time do I have?
5 more minutes.
5?
Yes.
Okay, so I go back to human obligation. The Sustainable Development Goals, although a lot of people say are hard to measure, have one beautiful element. They committed themselves to leaving no one behind. But I also went ahead and assumed that digital innovations would quicken the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. They also went ahead and assumed that digitalization surpasses traditional barriers and gives persons with disabilities a good shot at livelihoods, at education, at access to financial services. So the moment you appreciate that this is a matter of life and death for us, and I'm serious about this, the moment you appreciate that if I walk into your online space and I can't access it, it could be a matter of life and death for me. It could be the only reason I don't have a job. It could be the only reason I don't have access to life-saving information. It could be the only reason I can't learn something new. And it could be the only reason I'm going to remain in perpetual poverty, simply because you refuse to do something small, making your online content accessible. So for me, Paul, and everyone else, that is the only obligation, the human obligation. Because there are laws, there are guidelines, there are accessibility standards. And this is something that never really seems to work. Why? Because we fail to put a human face to it. It's not stuff that government or civil society comes up with to make life uncomfortable for developers and business owners. No, it is a human obligation. And that is why it is important that we assess gaps. That's why it is important that we self-evaluate and self-audit, identify where we are going wrong, identify how we can rectify this, and make sure that we are leaving no one behind, because the life out there depends on it. Thank you so much.